challenges and benefits of operating your own authority, part 2.
Bring it to real, no chaser. We're going to use some of Mike's examples that he come up in the industry. All right. Managing business operations. All right. So the biggest thing, building your form, your LLC, yada, yada, yada. That's easy. But are people really ready to be the CEO, the dispatcher, maintenance supervisor, compliance officer, and everything else that comes with that? I don't know. Did you underestimate that?
Yes and no. I did learn along the way that I hate a lot of those things that you just mentioned. I'm just not good at those. But if the decision is to not only be a solo truck owner-operator, but potentially build something, the bad news for me was that eventually I had to go over everything and like get at least reasonably informed about every aspect of it.
Yeah, because I think the importance in that is everything requires your attention, and you can only be in so many places at one time, right?
Yes, I think for when you're just starting, and you know, if it's one truck operation, especially if you're an individual driving it, I think it's doable as long as you are a reasonable individual that can kind of like multitask and just do reasonable things at a reasonable pace and don't break nothing.
Right.
But once you start going in anything above that, once you're perhaps bringing another truck, a driver in the equation, dispatch, whatever else you're bringing in, now some of those things that you just listed, that's when you're going to learn more about them, and some things you may like, some things you may not like.
You know, which is crazy because like as you're learning these things, you got to allow for that learning curve just like anywhere else. But now in this arena, it's going to affect your income. So when you're in charge also, you know, leads us to number 2, handling higher operating costs. So things cost money.
Yes.
And as you're learning this, if a mistake can stop the income from coming in, but you still have the fuel costs, the insurance costs, you know, and then we'll get into that. But you also have options to lease onto somebody else to leverage that cost until you're stronger. But nevertheless, this is a real challenge because, you know, most guys are used to, if you were leasing on and now you're getting your own authority, you know, does the factoring company just give you a line of credit for your fuel? Is that even an option for somebody out the gate?
No.
There you have it. No.
No, I mean, you can apply for it, and again, it's probably going to be credit-based and so on. But one thing that everyone needs to know, for the most part, most factoring companies and all the fuel cards, that are prepaid. So you kind of like you putting certain amount of money from your billables towards the fuel card. So it's not a credit card that you use today and you pay tomorrow. No, that's actually you put the money today and you get the fuel today, not tomorrow, but not before you put the money in.
Right. So here you go. And now while you have all these things rushing in at you and these costs, you have to be ready for, you know, grand opening. And now, you know, to your greatest surprise, a lot of brokers, reputable brokers won't touch you for 90 days.
And again, 90 days, let me not even be a start. There are some brokers that not going to touch you for the first 30 days. There are the next step up is 60 days, then 90 days, then 6 months, then a year, and a very few brokers will not touch you for 2 years.
2 years, man, that's a very long time.
But it's very few. Other than that, I think there are also other challenges, such as there are, you know, depending on which economic stage you're gonna enter the arena, during which economic stage. Sometimes when the market is really, really bad, I mean freight market, let's say there is very limited freight available, it's not paying that well, and when we call it here in trucking, brokers market, carriers market. So if you entering arena during the brokers market, even though I think it's not exactly the most accurate description of that, because when the market is bad, everyone is suffering.
Right, yeah.
But because of abundance of trucks available on the market and the lack of loads, a lot of brokers and customers will not spend time setting up with a new carrier at that point, it doesn't even matter if you've been in business for 10 years. If you're not set up, we're only one phone call away from getting a carrier that we already set up and ready to rock and roll. And for them to set a new carrier up, it's still sometimes fine. It takes 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But we may not want to spend those 5 minutes to set up a new carrier. But again, that's not necessarily time and business related. It's more of just a lazy prick. Don't want to do the job, and he can get away with that. So that can be a challenge. There are other challenges such as number of trucks. There are certain brokers and customers that will not work with you unless you have an X number of trucks. I've heard numbers anywhere between 5 and 25.
And that's crazy, right? Because even if you have 5 trucks running OTR, what's really to say that they're like even in the area to be able to recover that load?
Yes, but I think usually there is it sort of makes sense because, if a customer needs a load to be shipped from point A to point B, and let's say the truck broke down, theoretically, the company that has more than one truck is going to be able to drop everything we're doing
for them
and run to save that load. In reality, it's probably a little bit different, but I do not think that the people making those rules and decisions are the people that are actually in the trenches on both sides, brokerage, shipper, department, the carriers.
Working for the solution.
Yes. A lot of times it's a very, very vague things that somebody in the office is like, oh, I think I have a good idea. How do we avoid this breakdown without easy recovery? Well, they're just not work with anybody that has less than 2 trucks.
Right, yeah.
Is that a solution? No, because what if that other truck is on the other side of the country and on another super important load? And that's a challenge. But I think the idea behind it, as far as the number of truck goes, is that your ability to recover the load.
Right. Then we got finding high-paying loads. Now, given that you worked with some, you were dispatched at some point and then doing it yourself, is it better? Which way is better?
I mentioned that in many, many videos, and I know, a lot of people is gonna call me out for a BS because in the current situation, it may sound like I'm just saying the stuff that is convenient to me. However, when I was an owner operator and I haven't done any dispatching at that point, at the beginning, I thought that I can do better because I thought that the dispatcher is never as invested emotionally in my business as me. I think we just throwing crap at me and until I accept something.
Right.
Then I had an opportunity to dispatch, and I did dispatch, and I think that made the biggest impact for the future success, because I realized that everything I thought about dispatching, I was totally wrong. And then I went, for a little period of time, I went from dispatching trucks back to being an owner-operator. And at that point, the technology was already there to where I could use, let's say, DAT and dispatch myself.
Yeah.
But I already knew enough to understand that I used to consider myself a badass dispatcher. I think right now, no, I'm outdated. I don't know the market exactly what it is. However, back in the day, I thought if you have a good dispatcher, I could beat him. No problem. And when I went back to doing my own operator thing, I actually went and had another company to dispatch me with their average dispatcher over me, the best of the best in my own head.
Dispatching yourself.
Dispatching myself, because I am still convinced that normal dispatcher, I'm not talking about negligent dispatcher, I'm not talking about the dispatcher who doesn't know what he's doing, I'm not talking about dispatcher who doesn't know what the truck looks like. Any normal average dispatcher who does it every day, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, who is in the market dispatching other trucks, he has so much more information on his hands at any second than me dispatching myself, because I'm only looking for one load at a time. If I get a good offer, let's say go from Lakeland to Cleveland, Ohio, it may sound as a good load, but what if the last time I was in Ohio a month ago?
Yeah, you're going off of muscle memory that it was good then, but you don't know what the...
So now, and for me to accept this good load, I kind of have to have an idea what I'm going to have there once I'm going to get there. But you don't know that. You're always guessing, or you're always behind on the information available to you. And your average dispatcher had a truck there yesterday. So he's a lot more aware of what's going on in the market than me. I would feel like I'm always guessing. And in trucking, luck is good. But if you're building everything based on the luck, you're out of luck.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a phone call yesterday, actually, a guy with his own authority, just kicking a couple ideas around. And it's pretty interesting because he has a dispatch service to dispatch his truck, right? 10%. Mm-hmm. I don't know. The problem is, like, I kind of feel that dispatcher at 10% has no skin in the game, right? So, I mean, it's the 10%, but everything is your flag. So, as opposed to having a dispatcher that you're leased onto, before he's booking that load, he's looking on safety. He's looking at your reloads. He's looking at everything that he's looking at you holistically to move for the entire week. Somebody that you're just calling once in a while. This guy, I got 2 dispatchers, 3, each one at 10%, and you're calling and you're flipping and you're flopping. And I'm sure there's good guys out there. I'm not saying that, but in this situation where you're just calling for one load at one time, and that guy's not really forward thinking how to reload you and how you're going to end your week. As a matter of fact, he's not even going to care if you get put out of service because none of that touches him.
I think this is a very legit challenge with dispatch services, and some very well-known, maybe even largest owner-operator companies that base dispatcher on the area. So, for example, some companies, I think the perfect dispatcher to begin with is the dispatcher that's responsible for that truck all the way through the whole process. Meaning that if you live in Lakeland and you going out, you're starting your week, that same dispatcher takes care of your first load, loads in between, and the last load, because it is his direct responsibility to make sure that you're not only getting this nice piece, it is his responsibility to make sure that you as an owner-operator, after everything you do, take home a nice fat check.
Right.
The challenge that I see with like dispatch services that only does the dispatcher, kind of like you call them, hey, I'm right here in let's say Cleveland, Ohio. What do you have? And a lot of companies, we base their dispatching around that. So we would have a dispatcher who is, let's say, let me use another example to have it like even greater impact. You have a dispatcher that is responsible for California, Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico area.
Right. So he's
area-based dispatcher. So if you work for one of those companies, now every time you as an owner-operator in that area, you give a call to that region's dispatcher.
Okay.
So now that dispatcher only cares about the loads.
Outbound.
Leaving that area.
Yeah, just as outbound.
He has no idea what is going on. Let's just use, for example, New York. So now, let's say you're talking to this dispatcher, and he's offering you a certain load for a certain amount of money, and now you're asking him, all right, man, like that sounds pretty good, but once I'm gonna get to New York, do you... I've heard the market is New York is very crappy. Like, do you have any loads in New York?
I don't know. Call Bobby.
And the answer is going to be, oh, yeah, absolutely. I just pulled it up on board. I see like 200 loads sitting available. So, yeah, that's going to be no problem. I think you're in good shape. So just once you get there, call Bobby. Now the guy goes to New York, and now he's realizing that, yeah, there are 200 loads. Same cheap, beat up 200 loads that was there when he was still in, let's say, Arizona. And now he's calling the Bobby, and the Bobby is offering him $1 a mile to come out of that area, out of New York area.
Because he understands the market from his area.
So now this frustrated driver who was like, okay, man, like the other guy told me that there is plenty of loads out there. Let me call Tom again that's responsible for Southwest outbound. And he is calling Tom and like, hey man, like I'm the guy that did that load for you from Arizona to New York. And you said there is a lot of loads because right now I called Bobby, and Bobby only has like a few crappy loads, nothing else. And that guy's gonna be like, I don't know what to do, man. Just call Bobby because he's responsible for that area. That is the same feeling that I would have gotten if I was dispatching myself, because I'm always guessing. It's only one load at a time.
Right. Yep.
And my overall goal is actually to make money at the end of the week and take home big, fat, nice check instead of having this one good load and then one crappy load and then maybe even crappier load after that. Too much guessing. When you get like a full service thing, you're paying not just for dispatch, you're paying for expertise, you're paying for people accepting the responsibility, you're paying people for planning, you're paying people for knowledge.
Yeah, it's a lot more complicated than it seems. And I think people sometimes can underestimate that. So I guess the idea here is you have to be honest with yourself and know your capacity and your capability of what you can do and where you're going to be strong, right? You got to do what's good for business. And that's the bottom line of everything, because it all ties down to your income. Like that's, you make these bad decisions out there and your revenue's going to see the effect of that. Again, we're not telling you to not do it. We're not discouraging anyone. We're just being honest with things that we have gone through coming up in this industry so that you can look at them, weigh them, and make the best decision for yourself and have the best success rate that you possibly can.
Just be realistic. Look at the numbers. Let the numbers not a feeling stock.
Yep, all facts.
I know plenty of people that will take a cheaper load as long as it's their decision over better load because it's somebody else's decision. People just like that emotional sometimes. At the end of the day, I say give it a shot. Well worth a try. Maybe you're really good at it, or maybe you just have a crappy dispatcher. And maybe you dispatching yourself is better than your crappy dispatcher. That happens.
Yeah.
Especially if that's like some third-party dispatching stuff. That can happen a lot. So give it a shot, try it out, and see how you do, and then just look at the numbers and make a decision. But at the end of the day, now with technology, you can totally do it. It's totally possible. Would I do it? Probably not, because I still believe I would push for a best dispatcher that I can get. But at the end of the day, and I would not accept some crappy dispatcher that just doesn't have a good understanding on what's going on in the market. But then at the end of the day, because the negotiations is still a thing, I want somebody who does it full time, do it for me, rather than me always guessing and quite often getting a shorter end of the stick.
There you have it, guys. Please be safe, drive safe, and make sure you hit that like and share. Keep on trucking.
Take care, guys.